televised rating games on the WNBA this year all involve Caitlin Clark. The only one that doesn't was a second half of a doubleheader in which Caitlin Clark played the first game.
Only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back too. I guess this, look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, look, don't come back. I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with an injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Tonight is the NBA draft. We'll have plenty of preview coverage, some predictions here on the show as well, so make sure you stay tuned throughout the program. Also, we've got a preview of everything going on in sports and television as well, some recaps with Simon Applebaum, who will go over how many folks watched the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. In addition, we'll talk some baseball on the show, get you covered on everything happening in sports and even some sports news and some sports betting news as well, which is what we're going to start off with here at the top of the show. Very interesting lawsuit that was filed, by the way, and this is taking over social media and the internet this morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it here. Certainly, you got to make your own judgment on some of this stuff, especially when it comes to a person-to-person lawsuit. This was a complaint that was filed in the Supreme Court against DraftKings that details a physical altercation involving a masked man and a plaintiff named John Doe on March 30th, 2013. Allegedly, a man was seen grabbing another man, threatening to kill a man, a plaintiff, who of course is filing this, unless he paid $500,000 to a gentleman named Gadun Spanky Kirilos, who is a prominent sports betting influencer, allegedly. It is also alleged that the same DraftKings employees later conspired to change the email address associated with this plaintiff's sports betting account. DraftKings has a response saying they have found no evidence of this happening and is moving to have the case dismissed. Needless to say, this individual who is being accused in some of this, named Spanky, is all over social media detailing exactly what happened, giving his side of the story, which, by the way, isn't pretty either. So for those of you who want to check this out on social media, feel free. We'll leave it at that. All right, NBA draft. We're just hours away from it. The New York Knicks have made the biggest story in terms of a trade on the eve of the draft, as they have made a deal to acquire Mikal Bridges from the New York Nets. The Knicks are sending 4 unprotected picks, 25, 27, 29, 31, a protected 25 protected Milwaukee first, a 2028 unprotected pick swap, and a 2025 second-round pick for Bridges. And so he is reunited with his Villanova teammates. It's like a Villanova reunion there with the New York Knicks. Meanwhile, another trade in a pick swap between Houston and Brooklyn. The Nets have reacquired their own 2026 pick, which they traded once upon a time to Houston to acquire James Harden. They get that pick back in exchange for the Suns' 27 pick, a first-round pick that Houston previously owned from a trade with the Suns. Are you following me? I'm not. Houston also forfeits the rights to swap picks with Brooklyn in 2025. And all of this is basically about Houston wanting to use that Suns pick to trade for Kevin Durant. Durant has not asked for a trade. Houston is looking to get better. Once upon a time, the Rockets had superstars, and now they have none. So they're looking to basically get a superstar. Does that summarize it? I hope so. The Knicks, OG Anunoby has opted out of his contract. He will hit free agency. He signed a 4-year, $72 million with the Raptors, a deal in 2020 with this player option for 24 and 25. The Knicks are still hoping to get Anunoby back. He missed 76 games the last 3 seasons because of injuries. So we'll see what ends up happening if OG stays in New York. Also, the latest Fever versus Sky matchup in the WNBA. How about this, folks? 2.3 million people watching Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. That great matchup on June 16th, 91-83, was just incredible. It was the most watched WNBA game in 23 years. Meanwhile, the matchup between the Yankees and Mets in Game 1 of the Subway Series goes to the Mets. They win by a final score of 9-7. It was the second outing for Garrett Cole. He gave up a bunch of home runs, did not look great. Needless to say, Cole's up against it. I mean, it was only his second start, and he basically hasn't pitched in a long time. Also, second time in Cole's career, he's allowed 4 home runs. The other one was 2022. Cole said that naturally after the game, it was not his best.
You make of tonight?
Yeah, it was just disappointing. Didn't really give us a good chance to win tonight. Didn't execute enough good pitches. Just kind of dug us a hole. So,
what did you think of your fastball in particular tonight?
Yeah, I just not great command of it. Throughout the evening, trying to find a blend of, intensity. Intensity and command. Being able to put it, kind of where we want, both inside the strike zone and out.
Naturally, Cole will get better as time goes on, but it's been a tough beginning for him. Needless to say, Aaron Judge, his teammate, not particularly worried, saying essentially this is his spring training.
What did you see from Garrett tonight?
Looking at all the numbers, the velo, everything's, coming back. This is this guy's spring training. So, coming back from injury like that, anything with the arm is always, you gotta be careful with that kind of stuff. So, seeing him come back and have the velo he has, and I think he was executing the location where he wanted. It just wasn't as fine as what he normally does. But he's still working back. That's our ace. That's our guy, and I want him out there every single 5 days. So games like this happen. You just got to move on, learn from it, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, Garrett Cole, of course, will be fine. I mean, he's won Cy Youngs before, and naturally he'll get deeper into games, but still very early on in his season. The Mets, meanwhile, have turned their season around. Everyone seems to be giving the Grimace the credit, but let's give some to the Mets for calling up Mark Vientos. He's been fantastic for them. Carlos Mendoza, the manager of the Mets, says that he's just been exactly what they needed.
What for you have you seen in terms of just his adjustments as the league obviously had a little bit of a book on him?
Yeah, like you said, it seems like the league was adjusting to him, but his ability to make adjustments that quickly, and that's the key at this level. You're gonna go through ups and downs, and how sure you can keep those down moments, and that's what we're seeing here now. That he went through that little stretch when it was hard for him, and he was chasing, and they were spinning a lot, but he was still ready to hit the fastball. I mean, we know that every time he puts the barrel on the baseball, he can do some damage. We saw it tonight, but for him to don't panic. Continue to trust the process. Continue to look for pitches that he can do damage with. And we saw it tonight against a pretty good pitcher.
Good job by the Mets, taking that game last night 9-7. All right, now let's get to the latest in college baseball. Bit of a surprise as Jim Schlossnagle basically reversed courses, said that he would not leave Texas A&M for Texas. He did it. He's going to end up taking over the Texas head baseball coach there. We'll have more on this story a little bit later, but he was a phenomenal coach at A&M now takes over to coach the Longhorns. Meanwhile, the hottest team in baseball remains the Guardians. They keep winning. Baltimore keeps losing. Orioles have lost 5 in a row. Cleveland's won 7 in a row. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who once upon a time told reporters that his inclination was not to play for the Yankees, seems to be softening in that stance. Right now, Guerrero is a member of the Blue Jays, so remains to be seen as to whether or not you would even get traded to the Yankees. But needless to say, the trade deadline's coming up next month. Also, afternoon baseball, ton of games. We got the Rays taking on Seattle in an hour from now. Kirby and Pepio are the starting pitchers there. Over in hockey, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final reached 7.66 million viewers. So this was the most watched NHL game since the decider in the 2019 Cup. Blues-Bruins final. Not a huge surprise. A very compelling 7-game series. Jacksonville has approved a $1.4 billion renovation of their stadium. The Jaguars and their city agreed to contribute $625 million to the renovation, and the city also agreed to pay $150 million over the next 2 seasons for maintenance. Also, the NCAA Council has agreed to remove cannabis from banned drug classes for championships and postseason football. And also in soccer, a bit of a scare for Lionel Messi for Argentina. They end up winning and reach the Copa America finals. He had an injury scare that he says, quote, was nothing serious. We'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. When we come back, it's time to dive into the latest in the NBA. Don't go away.
Technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You know, this guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and Bengals needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Tonight's the NBA Draft. We've got coverage for you exclusively on SportsGrid, so make sure you keep it here this evening. But first, let's get the latest update in terms of the couple trades that happened with Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. And Gilbert, let's get started with this Bridges trade. The Knicks building on what they've built thus far, trying to get better, trading away a little bit of the future to, I would say, get much better at the present. Does that sound fair?
That's a fair assessment. This Knicks team, we saw them come up a little short, but there have been a lot of jokes about the power of friendship. But they have that Villanova quartet together with Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart together. So that adds on to what they've done this past season. Julius Randle will come back from injury, and they're going to try and re-sign OG Anunoby. So the Knicks are trying to kind of compete with the Celtics in the Eastern Conference and, see if they can catch up with them.
Yeah, and right now, you're right. It's funny that all those same players from Villanova, I mean, harmony is a good thing, and the Knicks definitely have it. All right, so now this pick swap between Houston and Brooklyn, my understanding is this was a pick that was once given away that they are getting back, maybe potentially to try and acquire a player like Kevin Durant. Gilbert, this is a super confusing trade here with all of these picks going back and forth, but is the end result basically Houston at this point trying to get their way out of this rebuild and get themselves a star?
There's a lot going on here. First, we'll start with Brooklyn. Obviously, in addition to trading Bridges, they're trying to right some of their wrongs. They parted ways with a lot of draft capital to try to build a team, and obviously they've come up short with the different eras of teams that they've had. Now, with the Rockets, they are trying to take a big leap. They were 41-41 this past year. They have a lot of young talent. They have a win-now coach in Ime Udoka. So I think they are trying to just really stockpile as much as they can to be on the market for a star. They're looking to maybe move down in the draft. They picked third in this year's draft, so they have a lot of different ways that they can improve their team and make a big leap in the Western Conference, because the Western Conference is unforgiving and it's not getting any less competitive this upcoming season. So the Rockets will be an interesting team to keep an eye on tonight.
Yeah, they will. And, certainly I think that there's not going to be a lot of drama going into the draft. At least that's what the odds say. And in terms of the odds right now, Gilbert, do you see it the same way with the way that the draft board shakes out?
You know what, Craig? This is interesting this year of all years. I know people are kind of comparing it to the 2013 NBA draft where everyone was surprised when Anthony Bennett went first overall. And I honestly think if there was any year to maybe sprinkle a player with low odds, this would be the year. It certainly seems like if the Hawks stay at number one, they will take Risa Shea. But I think that they're still listening to other teams who are willing to maybe trade up for somebody that they don't believe would be available when they pick. So Donovan Clingan is up there. He is somebody, if a team trades up with Atlanta, maybe they have him in mind. There have been a lot of other people named there. I don't think it would be a guy like Reed Shepherd, but it very well could be somebody like that. This draft is very unpredictable, and it does start at the top.
Yeah, and everyone knows Clingan because, of course, he played at Connecticut and won championships there. He's got an interesting prop, I think, over on FanDuel right now. When you take a look at it, with the performance that he had at Connecticut, he could be the number one overall pick. But he also could slip a little bit. I mean, it's that kind of draft. So the over for him in terms of his draft position is set on FanDuel at 3.5, and that's minus 166. So basically top three, if he gets that, you don't get a lot. Let's be honest. You're laying 166 to win 100. How about the chance of a slippage here of 3.5 plus 124? It seems like he's grouped up with a couple of other players that could go in a similar spot.
He's definitely the second best big man in this draft after Alex Sarr. And the thing with him, I think, is there's been a lot of talk about the Grizzlies moving up from 9 to maybe take him at 3 with that Rockets third pick. But I don't necessarily think that that's a given that happens. And if he does fall out of that top 3, I think the Spurs have been linked to him. So I think that there is a really pretty good chance, in my opinion, that he falls to maybe 4 to that Spurs pick, just because I don't necessarily see the Rockets making that move if they stay put at 3rd overall. So again, a lot of things to keep an eye on, but the big one is, will Memphis be able to move up? Because they seem like they're in the market for a center like Clingan, and they would probably trade up to 3 to do it.
All right, so now let's move on to another player from Connecticut, Stephon Castle. He's supposed to go basically within the first 10 picks of the draft over on FanDuel. His number is set at 5.5 plus 152 on the over to that. If he goes under, it's minus 205. I guess he's not expected to go in the top 5, but Gilbert, do you see a path to that?
I certainly do. Again, this is kind of a credit to the unpredictability of this year's draft. A lot of people think that Castle maybe has the highest ceiling or the biggest potential to be a star in this league based on what he showed last season at UConn. His shooting is going to be a swing skill for him. That will kind of dictate how big of a star he can be at the NBA level. But he's somebody who I think the Spurs are interested in him as well. If they think he won't fall to 8, they could use that 4th pick to take him. But I don't think he'll fall much further than 6 with Charlotte. But I do think there's a really good chance he does go in the top 5 just because of the potential he's shown.
All right. Now, the second most popular player in the draft, we'll get to the most popular. The second most popular is Zach Edey, of course, from Purdue. Maybe in a different draft, I'm hearing, Gilbert, he's not a first-round pick, but in this one he is. 14.5 is his number, minus 130 on the over. On the under, it's 102. At this point, if you're making a bet like this, Gilbert, it's trying to find the fit, right? It's trying to find the team here at this point.
Exactly. I think Zach Edey, of all these players, probably has the biggest range of picks he could fall to right now. I think it could be anywhere between 7 and 20, which is wild to say out loud. But Portland at 7 and 14 has expressed interest in him. Oklahoma City at 12, maybe Memphis at 9 if they stay put. Those are 4 spots I like for him in the lottery. I don't think he'll fall past 19 as hometown Raptors select there, and they're on the market for a big man. But I actually kind of am leaning towards him being a lottery pick in this draft.
All right. And finally, the story that we'll be waiting for tonight, but we may not be given, is Bronny James, who is eligible to be drafted. Most project him as a second-round pick, maybe the Lakers in the second round or any other team. Gilbert, here it is, your final call on Bronny James. Is he a Laker? Is he another team? Is he on no team after, I guess it is tomorrow night, right? I don't know that he'll get taken tonight.
I don't think we'll hear his name called tonight, Craig. And it does honestly feel like a foregone conclusion that he's going to be a Los Angeles Laker. A lot of smoke screens about his dad being over the idea of them playing together as teammates. But, I think a team could come and swipe it. I think the one thing with him, he might go earlier than expected, but certainly seems like it's going to be still Lakers.
All right, Gilbert, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime, Craig.
All right, we'll take a quick time out. Sports Grid Sound Off coming up next here on NewsWire. Don't go away.
Technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be in a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. It'll be a big night for us on SportsGrid. We'll cover the NBA draft for you, so make sure you tune in a little bit later for our guys covering the draft. For now, the big story is a trade that occurred in the NBA. Some picks were swapped, but essentially, bottom line is the New York Knicks look like they're really putting their foot down on the pedal after having a really nice season last year, coming up short, of course, before getting to the finals. They like to push forward, and the best way to do it, I guess, is to acquire more players from Villanova because that's what the Knicks are all about. Our very own Coach Young weighs in on the deal that sends Bridges to the Knicks.
What's up, everybody? It's Coach Young. It's time for your quick take. Breaking news is the New York Knicks have acquired Mikal Bridges in a cross-city trade with the Brooklyn Nets. Listen, folks, simply put, at some point the Knicks have to push their chips to the center of the table with their first-round picks, trading for. But the fact that they were only having to shed Bogdanovich, who's going to go into his last year of his deal, basically is a shrewd move by Leon Rose. It also gives them protection in case OG Anunoby doesn't come back. They're both 3-and-D guys. The difference between OG and Bridges is OG misses a ton of time. Bridges never seems to get hurt. He's also a Villanova guy. So the Villanova Knicks are now complete. It now sets up what happens with Hartenstein. Knicks aren't done, but right now, they're the second best team in the East. It's been your quick take. Until next time.
All right, thanks, Coach. And, of course, you can catch Coach on our coverage tonight of the NBA draft, which should be a lot of fun. And naturally, with all the success that Villanova has had in the past on the court, it would make sense that the Knicks would have not one, not two, not three, 4 players that are Wildcats now playing for the Knicks next season. So Harmony should be at the Garden in full force. Meanwhile, Harmony, of course, going into tonight's draft, the big question is surrounding a lot of different players. At least there are some players who are very popular. Purdue, one of the best all-time playing at for the Boilermakers. I would say it's probably fair. Zach Edey, the big man, going to get drafted tonight. Will he be a top 10 pick, a top 20 pick? I would assume he'll be a first-round pick, but our very own Ben Stevens weighs in on whether or not Edey can move up into the lottery area.
Mark my words right now. Zach Edey is going to be a lottery pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Heck, if the year was 1984 and not 2024, Zach Edey would probably be the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft. But basketball looks a little bit different. The 2-time consecutive National Player of the Year in men's college hoops is going to be selected in the lottery. That's the first 14 picks of the draft. So here's how I would bet it. Edey's draft position prop for the 2024 NBA draft is 15.5. The under has the juice, but I'm going to take the under of 15 and a hook, and I think it's worth a sprinkle on Zach Edey, not just in the lottery, but a top 10 selection as well at plus 250. Zach Edey in the lottery, you can book it. Craig, back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Ben. All right. So Ben's on the record. Now we know. Zach Edey, high pick tonight. We will see with our coverage tonight. All right. Meanwhile, pretty big change of events here for this gentleman named Jim Schlossnagle. He was the head coach at Texas A&M University. Now he's the head coach at Texas. Recently, at the College World Series, Schlossnagle was asked about the possibility of leaving A&M and going to Texas and said that he never would.
Rumors circulating today about a specific job opening. What do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. That's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question. But I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. So write that.
Coach, thank you very much.
Eerily similar to Nick Saban telling reporters he's not going to be the head coach at the University of Alabama when he was the Miami Dolphins head coach, and then took the job at the University of Alabama. Schlossnagle, I'm sure, will do a great job at Texas, but he'll always have that little press conference to remind him, may want to be a little careful about what you say. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. Coming up next, Pat Evans joins us from Legal Sports Report. We'll have an update on sports betting in Canada and a whole lot more. So stay with us here on the Grid, as we have plenty more to come right after these messages. Don't go away.
technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You know, this guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be in a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong. This is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Hey, it's great to see Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We're going to get into some hot topics involving potentially Kansas sports and, still trying to lure the Chiefs away. Maybe sports betting has something to do with that. Stay tuned for that story. But first, let's bring Pat in to talk about the latest in Canada. And our focus, Pat, as we begin, is more of a regulated gambling market in Ontario. So thank you again for coming on the show, and would love the breakdown as to what this could potentially look like.
Yeah. Hey, Craig, thanks for having me. I missed you last week because I was in Canada kind of catching up on the market because, down here in the States, we kind of sometimes forget about our neighbor up north, but there's a lot going on. I went up to the Canadian Gaming Summit in Toronto, and yeah, the talk of the town was Alberta. Right now, in 2021, Canada, they changed the criminal code to allow for single event wagering. That kind of opened up the market. But for the most part, it's just lottery sports books run by provincial lotteries. Of course, that changed in Ontario in early 2022, where they opened up the market. There was a couple panels where they kind of patted themselves on the back for creating this giant market. I think they have something like 51 operators. They've done $2.4 billion in sports betting revenue in year 2. So they were celebrating that. But the talk of the conference was Alberta. And it sounds like, actually, it's confirmed, Dale Nally, the Minister of Red Tape Reduction, which is a great name. I think the U.S. needs to work on the regulatory names. The Minister of Red Tape Reduction, he confirmed that Alberta will be copying, for the most part, the framework that Ontario put into place to have an open market. He said, we're going to massage it a little bit. He unlike Ontario, they're having lots of conversations with the First Nations in the province, and they're also talking with the brick and mortar casinos, because I think they have almost 40, and Ontario didn't include that in the framework right from the get-go. They want retail sports books. They want the really solid land-based industry to be part of the online industry right away, and so it's coming to Alberta. That's kind of big news in Canada. I mean, of course, the Oilers couldn't get it done in Game 7, but you imagine the betting that would have gone on up there. I think Nally told us that Albertans love to gamble. which I think is kind of funny. But he said during the Stanley Cup Finals, the 50-50 raffles at the Oilers games got up to $16 million, meaning the winner took home $8 million. That's insane. Coming from a guy who went to a lot of Vegas Golden Knights games when I lived in Vegas, they never got that high, even in Vegas. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting market to watch and to kind of come into its own. Who knows when that will be? There's some talk that it could potentially be by the end of this year, but I would put my money on early next year. We'll see what happens, but you can expect pretty similar kind of rollout from operators that we've seen in Ontario, which is most of the operators down here, and even some more international operators. So Alberta's coming, and so any Canadians that watch you can kind of be happy if they live in Alberta.
Yeah, and good job getting up there so you can give us this information as well. Okay, so you've been talking about this, and basically we have been reporting this through you guys at Legal Sports Report. I should say you guys are reporting it and we're echoing it, that Kansas is really interested in the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're interested in the Royals as well. We know that both are looking kind of to upgrade their stadiums or get new stadiums as well. I mean, with the success the Chiefs have had, it is just hard for me to believe that financially speaking, that through some sort of form of revenue from sports wagering, that they could get them to move over to Kansas. But that is the story here, and it continues. There's still, smoke here. Does it ever become fire?
I'm not sure if it ever becomes fire, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely lots of smoke. And to your point, the Chiefs and Royals have their side-by-side stadiums there in Kansas City. Their lease is until 2031. But they're already thinking about projects. The Chiefs want to renovate Arrowhead. The Royals want to move to downtown Kansas City, which is in Missouri. And the voters and the officials in the state have not done a whole lot to give them confidence. In fact, voters in Kansas City voted against sending more tax dollars to helping fund anything right now. And so that's left the Chiefs and Royals saying, hey, maybe we can look to go elsewhere, maybe even across the border. And they have said they will entertain options from the Kansas side of Kansas City. Now, what recently happened, we'll go back to when sports betting went into law first, is they earmarked 80% of sports betting revenue to an attraction fund to attract teams, most notably these two. Well, this week or last week, I can't remember which day exactly, Governor Laura Kelly signed a bill in place that will allow, that kind of changes a bond structure to allow for 70% of it to fund a stadium project or stadium projects. And that is in part funded by sports betting revenue. It would also come in from lotteries and any tax revenue generated from, entertainment districts around said stadiums. And so that just gives them a little bit of playing room to say, hey, we can help you move over here. Well, Missouri is not doing anything. Of course, the Kansas City, Missouri mayor has come out and said, whoa, we're going to do something. We'll get an offer on the table. I think the Royals and Chiefs have a lot of leverage. I don't think they're going to be quick on making a deal with anybody. I think they're going to see who comes in with the best deal and go from there. But sure enough, Kansas, right as they wanted to from the get-go, going to try to use sports betting revenue to attract a team to the Kansas side.
And look, I like the effort. We've been talking about it for a while. Maybe some progress is made. Meanwhile, is there any progress made in Missouri? I know that they're trying to get sports betting on the ballot in November. Pat, what's the latest there?
Yeah, so, we talked before, the Winning for Missouri Education Coalition has turned in more than 340,000 signatures for the ballot. That's good. I mean, they need to have verified 170 or about their signatures. The Secretary of State is going through those right as we speak, and we'll know fairly soon whether or not sports betting as an issue will be on the ballot in November. Well, there's been polls throughout this whole process. As you know, we've seen no movement on the Senate side of the legislature in Missouri. The House has put through several packages over the past couple of years, the same one that voters could vote on. And they just have not, the Senate just is not moving it. It failed again this year for the third straight year, even though, a couple of years ago, Kansas and them were racing to get it off the ground. And so, through the whole time, you would expect there'd be, ravenous, voters expecting to get to vote on this. But according to the most recent poll that came out this week, it's pretty much split right around 35% for and against. Then you've got the middle undecided amount. We've had almost 50% in some polls. So you might guess those undecided registered voters might lean toward yes. But it's going to be close, I think, when it comes down into November. I don't think it's going to be an overwhelming majority to say we want this, but it's going to be close. And that's what I'm going to be watching on election day versus some of the other, things to be paying attention to, including the presidential election. So, Missouri voters will likely get to vote. It's going to be close, though.
All right. Well, at least we have something to look forward to as far as, getting sports, betting going on a ballot somewhere. I guess Missouri ends up being at least the one state in November. All right. Fair enough, Pat. Great stuff. As always, welcome back, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for coming on NewsWire.
Thanks as always, Craig.
All right. Pat Evans with us. Follow him on social media and also over at LegalSportsReport.com. That's where you can read all the columns that we discuss. All right. Coming up next, we got Simon Applebaum from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised. Meanwhile, the Stanley Cup Finals was televised. How did they do in Game 7? We'll discuss that. Also, a preview of the Olympic Games as well. We'll be right back with more NewsWire.
Technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time to catch up with our resident expert on sports media and viewership, and as it pertains to sports betting along those lines as well. Simon Applebaum of the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised, which you can hear on Blog Talk Radio and wherever you hear your popular podcast, joins us to go over the very latest in viewership. And Simon, thanks again for coming on the show. I know a great place to start, which is sort of rare, honestly, when you think about it, is hockey. I mean, let's be honest. Of the four major sports, it is the fourth most popular, but you wouldn't know that from the ratings that they brought in from Game 7 the other night.
Absolutely not, Craig, and great to be back with you. ABC and the National Hockey League are so happy with the results. 7.7 million viewers watching Game 7 Monday night. It was a fantastic game. Sean McDonough, by the way, I thought did a marvelous job in play-by-play along the way for ESPN and ABC. It was huge. This was the most watched Stanley Cup Final Game 7, or game, really, in probably about 15, 20 years. And there were a number of reasons why. First of all, it was a great final series with the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. It was a great game on Monday night. You also had great publicity on the part of first ESPN and ABC, the way they fashioned the playoffs as a whole new season. Remember that spot with the Zamboni on the rink? And the announcer is saying off camera, we had the wonderful regular season. Now wipe the slate. Here comes the playoffs. And it really was tremendous. As I said, 7.7 million viewers for Game 7. For the entire Stanley Cup Finals, 4.2 million viewers, all on ABC. And the playoffs, 1.8 million was the average. Also, a big trick is, remember, this was probably the first Stanley Cup Finals in recent memory that was entirely on broadcast, entirely on ABC, compared to a year ago where it was all on TNT. So TNT really needs to get a lesson out of what ABC and ESPN did this time around, because it's their turn with the finals. And, of course, I'm going to hope for a 7-game series. But congratulating everybody all around. It was a big, big milepost in terms of viewership for the NHL.
Yeah, very unique series, without a doubt. Helped that. 3-0, 3-3, Game 7, tight game, no question. But, yes, very good job by all involved. All right, so the Olympics are coming. Simon, this is generally, the Summer Olympics is a mixed bag, especially with the time of when these things air. It's always an interesting debate. I know that there's going to be more streaming options than ever to watch this, and NBC Universal certainly has the rights to this once again, so we know that they're going to be involved. The Olympic trials are also underway. We're seeing a lot of discussion on that. Seems to be pretty popular on social media as well. What do you make of the coverage thus far? And we're a month away from getting this thing going.
In fact, we are 1 month away exactly. Here we are, June 26th, and July 26th is the opening ceremonies for the Olympics. NBC Universal right now has a mixed picture going. In terms of the Olympic trials, which they have been promoting left, right, and center on NBC, on Peacock, and on USA Network, they are doing okay. It's not Olympic ratings or Olympic viewership, but it's pretty much okay. We do know that on Sunday night for track and field, about 4.1 million people were watching it on NBC, and about 1 million plus were watching it on Peacock. On Saturday, when they had track and field, it was 3.7 million on NBC and about 400,000 on Peacock. So there was a shift from Saturday to Sunday in terms of people watching exclusively on Peacock. And unfortunately, there were some issues with the Olympic team. There were some major people who we thought were going to go to Paris. They're not going to, like Dan O'Brien, and one of the female track and field stars had a problem with her heat, so she's not going to be there. The issue with the Olympics right now is this. There still is this feeling that NBC Universal is publicizing and promoting and marketing these games as if it was 30, 40 years ago when it was just a broadcast network deal and when everybody else on broadcast television played dead. They ran reruns. That is not the case. You have an Olympic situation in Paris. It's very attractive how they're going to be doing it, particularly with some of the games in locations like the Eiffel Tower and the Seine River with the opening ceremonies and so forth. And you have some really interesting matchups going on between USA and the rest of the world. And yet, you have this crazy situation where you have NBC, which will be live in the daytime, will be edited at night, 3-hour tape delay. You got Peacock, which is going to be really the main place to watch the Olympics, live, taped, interactive, shoppable, and so forth. Maybe even sports betting with Comcast Xfinity's Odd Zone. We don't know yet. And yet we still have the whole big picture about what's going on. Yesterday, NBC finally announced all the commentators and play-by-play in English. By the way, for those who were hoping that Caitlin Clark was going to be part of the NBC Olympic team in women's basketball, sorry, she's not going to be doing it. It's going to be Noah Eagle and Lucina Robinson. Noah Eagle play-by-play, Lucina Robinson, who's great at both play-by-play and analyst, doing the commentary role. And something else you ought to know, too, is that most of the events that NBC is going to carry, the play-by-play and the analysts are not going to be in Paris. They're going to be in Stamford, Connecticut, doing their thing. Why? We don't know. I think NBC right now has to do a better job of promoting the games. One thing you need to do in the next week or two is do a special event here in New York or a conference call reporters to say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's how we see each network, NBC, USA, Peacock, et cetera, et cetera. and coming to games. I think they have a great shot to do very, very well, but they have to really get on the pedal and make sure that people know, hey, you should care about the Olympics in Paris.
Let's skip ahead, Simon. Most watched WNBA game in 23 years. Not surprising. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, 2.3 million viewers watching this, Simon. And I guess the question isn't, are people watching? Because we know they are. What kind of staying power do you think they have? Because that's really going to be the test of time here.
You know, I think we now have a rivalry. We have a rivalry in the WNBA, Craig, worthy of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in the NBA, and that is the Chicago Sky with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark with the Indiana Fever. People, I think, are really getting tuned to this, and it's carrying over, by the way, also into Ion's coverage of the WNBA. On Friday, when the Fever played the game, 1.2 million people, that was their best yet. 1.1 million or so for the other game afterward. And the Ion people, by the way, get the final Fever Sky game on August 31st. I think that now the WNBA has a great rivalry. It's great for television. Clark, Reese, both coming up together in college. Now they're playing against each other on teams with a great supporting cast. I think this is going to be the rivalry that really turns the WNBA into must-watch television.
Yeah, All-Star game coming up as well. Simon, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
You got it, Craig. Take care.
All right, Simon Applebaum of the podcast Tomorrow will be televised. Next episode, by the way, of Tomorrow will be televised, featuring one of our own. Executive producer Greg Sussman will be on the program. So make sure you stick around for that over on Blog Talk Radio. We'll be right back.
Technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You know, this guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. As we wrap it all up, it's time for us to get into a couple of stories to end the show. Is it possible there will be no robot umpires at all in Major League Baseball? It appears so. Also, what's the latest going on with the Stanley Cup? Let's find out. It's time now for some last licks. All right, let's start it off. The Stanley Cup has made its way to Sunrise, Florida. It's also made its way to Fort Lauderdale Beach, essentially the cup for people who are unfamiliar with the state of Florida. There's a couple of counties down here, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, where I live. People confuse Miami for Fort Lauderdale and Fort Lauderdale for Miami and Palm Beach for Fort Lauderdale. So Broward County is just, very big, obviously. The Panthers play in Sunrise, which is on the west. Fort Lauderdale and the beach is all the way on the east. And so a lot of the Panthers, they live there. I mean, that's what happens. So they thought it would be a good idea to get the party started by taking the cup on its tour. This happens, by the way, every time a team wins the Stanley Cup. And as you'll see here, they took it first to Fort Lauderdale Beach. And yes, they took it into the ocean. That was just one of the several locations that it has been. In fact, they even took it to a bar afterward. And my friend, who happened to be there, one of the players said, yeah, go ahead, lift it up. He took a picture with the Stanley Cup on Fort Lauderdale Beach. Panthers are definitely getting the party started. And they have the big ticker tape parade going on Sunday. By the way, not out west, but on Fort Lauderdale Beach as well. Okay, now an interesting development going on in AAA. We thought the notion is that robot umpires eventually are coming to Major League Baseball in the future, and maybe as soon as 2 years from now, not 2025, but 2026. But how about this? The Salt Lake Bees and all other AAA teams are switching to a full-time challenge system on Tuesday instead of the ABS, the robot umpire system. All games had been split between two ways of calling balls and strikes over the past couple of seasons. Now, games will be called by an automated ball strike system that have been used. That's going to be phased out. So potentially not robot umpires, but real umpires coming back. But you are given a challenge to balls and strikes. And apparently this has to be done within 5 or 10 seconds from the time the pitch is thrown. So it will not give the managers time to go back and, like, for example, get on the phone during a challenge and determine if they want to challenge it or not, or in football in the same way. This has to be almost done immediately. And needless to say, it seems like baseball is coming around to the idea that Major League umpires stay, but a challenge system could potentially come into place. So stay tuned to that as well. All right, tonight, 7:30 Eastern is your spot to be. It is the SportsGrid NBA Draft Special. That is 7:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, all the way through midnight, hosted by Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, and Coach James Young. Our producers tonight, Friezo, Chris Kofsky, Patrick Foster, Jack Cromwell. Our director is AJ, and it's going to be a fun night tonight because the drama is always there. What makes this draft most interesting is, let's be honest, a lot of the players at the top of the draft don't appear to be franchise-type players. Every once in a while, you have a draft like this where there's no Victor Wembanyama, there is no Yao Ming, there is no Shaquille O'Neal or Patrick Ewing or Tim Duncan or David Robinson. I should keep going, right? Every once in a while, there's just not a draft. There's players that a lot of people haven't heard of, like me included. So that's what's going to happen tonight, and I think that's what makes it more intriguing. The other part of this, just so you know, is that the other story surrounding the draft is where Bronny James is going to get drafted, and we may not know tonight because the draft is now expanding into a second night. So tonight is the first round of the draft, and then tomorrow night is the second. So that'll be tonight, 7:30 Eastern. Check it out, our SportsGrid Draft Special. That will also do it for the show today. Thanks to Simon Applebaum from the podcast tomorrow will be televised. By the way, Greg Sussman, our vice president of content, will be on that show. So make sure you listen to that. Also, thanks to Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. He was on our show. And Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. Thanks to our producers, Frank and Michael. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget, Early Line coming up next, followed by Pharrell with more draft talk at 3 o'clock Eastern. And I'll be back with you for our next show tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire. And for those of you, by the way, into fantasy baseball, don't forget, you can catch me every Saturday morning, if you haven't yet, 9 a.m. Eastern, every single Saturday, along with George Kurtz right here on SportsGrid. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the draft tonight. Baseball action this afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow with a recap of it all right here on NewsWire. Have a great day, everyone.